Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Just a brief announcement before we begin, and probably the most important one today. There have been questions on the Wi-Fi password. The username is visitor. Username is visitor. And the password is Karibu. K-A-R-I-B-U. Once again, the Wi-Fi. Visitor is the username. The password is Karibu. Also, a kind request for anyone who's seated in the back. Kindly make your way to the front seats. We want to fill up the room as much as we can, also to accommodate those who will be coming in a bit later. If you are in the back, kindly make your way to the seats in the front as we get ready to begin. Thank you so much.
EBC and the EBC here in Arusha, and I'm very curious to follow this conference. I'm eager to gain insights about the developments in the region and to explore the potential for further cooperation. So just a few words about the BDI. The BDI is the umbrella federation of German industries. So it represents 38 associations from cars to manufacturing, digitalization and everything. It's about representing more than 100,000 German companies with about 8 million employees, and last year we had the celebration of our 70th anniversary. So we as BDI have been partnering with EABC since 2015. In Germany, we are famous for constantly lobbying for more German companies coming to Africa and investing in Africa, especially in East Africa, because we see a lot of potential in this region. Our partnership project with the EABC is very important to us, and it gives us the opportunity to learn more about the region, to create new networks, as well as create value for our members. And on top, it helps us giving some advice to our government how to deal with this region of Africa. Since 2017, EABC and BDI are very proud to have a second project around, and it's called Creating Perspectives. This project aims at bringing East African small and medium enterprises together with German companies to learn from each other and build partnerships. And I'm very pleased to see that some of the companies the project supports are here with us today. So we are working with these companies on developing innovative business models that are mostly based on locally available raw materials. I'm very excited to see that you even dedicate a whole panel today to this, to the issue of digital economy in this program. There is so much potential when it comes to smartly combining manufacturing with digitalization, and I think that's a major future trend of tomorrow. Mr. Nesbitt just said, make local East African. I couldn't agree more. Let me talk a little bit about regional integration, the reason why we are all here today. When we talk to our German member companies about the question, would you go to Africa, invest in Africa? And it always comes down to the question of regional integration, and this is one of their main concerns. Integration of markets is a key for long-term investment decisions, economic growth and prosperity. In Europe, we've been working hard on regional integration for more than 70 years after the Second World War, and I can assure you it has not been easy at all times. Until today, there are many issues and struggles, and the most recent example for that is from my perspective, infamous Brexit, which is shaking Britain and Europe and is already costing growth and jobs. This is the perfect example what lacking regional integration is leading to. Let me just name 3 key factors that help SMEs and large companies to expand their business. Number 1 factor, cost and market size. Regional integration expands markets and brings down costs for exporting companies. Individual countries only provide limited markets for companies, which means their growth is also limited. By facilitating exports, companies can grow and create more and better jobs for the local population. Could you imagine us as BDI having 100,000 member companies without export? Never ever. Germany is just too small as a country to provide so much potential for this large number of companies. Number 2, services and infrastructure. The integration of services and infrastructure is absolutely paramount for the private sector. At BDI, one of my focal points is energy and sustainability. Therefore, I know how important integrating power grids and production are for the manufacturing sector. Where there is energy, there will be manufacturing, there will be industry. Integration leads to a more efficient use of resources. It cuts cost and therefore provides industry with cheaper and more reliable power. In Europe, our power grid is constructed in a way that when Germany is producing a surplus of renewable energy, as it has come to in the last few years, our neighboring countries are able to take the overflow at very, very low and cheap prices. So especially with this renewable power in Europe, production, this flexibility becomes more and more important for European industries. Number 3, competitiveness. Regional integration increases competition and therefore pushes companies to be more competitive. I know this is not nice in anybody's view. I know that competition is something we always talk about, but sometimes we don't really like it and ask our governments to protect us from competition. This is done all around the globe. This is not an African specialty. But protection will not serve these companies in the long run. It might help that young and growing companies and industries for a few years, but then we have to stop protection. All over the world, the history has proven so often that protection only helps for a little while, and then it has a reverse and a negative effect. But there must be, otherwise, companies which are overprotected will not reach a state of international competitiveness. And all the more competitive these local companies are, the more interesting they are for international partners, and the more foreign investment they will attract. Recently, the African Continental Free Trade Area has been at the center of your political attention. We think this is a great step forward, and boosting intra-African trade will lead to more economic growth. Mr. Nesbitt gave you the numbers. But we know from our European experience that it will probably take quite a while until all of the trucks are free roaming inside East Africa without stopping. Therefore, any effort to achieve regional integration in the regional economic zones like the East African community should not be stopped. Instead, they should be increased. You should really push hard for this integration, because this integration leads to more competitiveness, to more growth, to more foreign investment, to more success, to more jobs, to more wealth. For German politics, Africa has always been a priority. 10 days ago, the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, welcomed 10 African heads of state in Berlin, including His Excellency Paul Kagame from Rwanda, as well as 2 high-ranking delegations led by African ministers in Berlin. And we at BDI were extremely proud that this event took place at our headquarters. So it shut down the whole building for 2 days, but it was very, very rewarding for us to have this high-ranking conference at BDI headquarters. German politics push our companies to come to Africa and to invest here to create jobs. And of course, German companies can create great value. When they come to stay. Germans are very reliable partners, and they are very tough about being a reliable partner. And when they are here, they not only sell their products, they manufacture here, and they invest heavily in training. To date, Germany companies in Africa are employing around 200,000 people. You have the example of Volkswagen in Rwanda, in Kigali, and they are starting now to develop a new mobility service in Rwanda. So the German foreign direct investment in Africa amounted to around 9 billion euros in 2017, and the German Development Investment Fund is offering German and African SMEs 800 million in credits to increase investments here. Nevertheless, we see, compared to other regions, German companies are underrepresented when it comes to foreign direct investment in Africa. Why is that? Many German companies are still family owned and run, and quite often they invest their own money, and they're very cautious. So they need infrastructure, legal certainty, and skilled labor. So to mobilize more German companies to engage in Africa, the BDI is going to engage even more with the the East African Business Conference, and we've just updated our publication on success stories of German companies in Africa. And what they all underline, these examples, is one thing clearly: despite all the challenges, it's worth investing. So I'm looking forward to this conference. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very interesting conference. Thank you.
Thank you very so much, and I think what will make East Africa grow is joint ventures. Joint ventures. We can have technology and our cooperating partners come and form joint ventures with that will be one part of growing our own industries. Now, can I call the Secretary General of the East African Community, Ambassador Liberet Mufumukeko, to make welcoming remarks. Liberet, please. Secretary General.
Your Excellency, Professor Kabudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs and East African Community Cooperation, United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency, Dr. Vensa Biruta, Chairperson of East African Community Council of Ministers and Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Republic of Rwanda, Honorable Ministers and the Cabinet Secretary, Right Honorable Speaker, Your Lordship, President of East African Community Court of Justice, Chairperson of East African Community Business Council, and members of the Board of East African Community Business Council, Holger Losch, Federal German Industry Director General or Deputy Director General, staff of East African Community and the EABC Secretariat, business members here present, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are actually in an event celebrating the 20th anniversary of East African Community existence. Let us have this mode of celebration. It began with 3 countries. Now we are 6 countries. This is a big achievement, double. We have also actually 20 years of great achievements, some challenges, and strong commitment in this journey. One of the operational principles of the treaty for the establishment of the East African Community integration process is actually a private-led integration and citizen-centered integration process. On behalf of the East African Community Secretary General, Ambassador Liberet Mufumukeko, let me say that it is a pleasure to be with you today, celebrating 20 years of our community existence. And I am happy to report that in these 20 years, the West African community now is ranked the first in Africa among the 8 regional economic communities, being actually the first one on board when it comes to the integration process. And this comes from African Union, from African Development Bank, from UNECA. So this is something you have to be happy of. I note with pleasure that the theme of a high-level business summit is private sector-driven regional integration for increased intra-East African trade and investment. This goes to show the commitment of the private sector in this integration process and in the development of East Africa. I'm sure that the crafters of the treaty are happy now that something they have actually visioned in the last 20 years is now happening. Over the 20 years, and as part of the celebration today, our community has made tremendous achievements that relate to doing business in East Africa and have facilitated socio-economic development in all of the East African community partner states. The private sector has been instrumental in these achievements and in driving the integration agenda. We began with the customs union. Now we are speaking about implementation of a single customs territory. We are on board and we are happy with achievement. We embarked on the common market. We are now implementing the common market protocol, where we speak about free movement of people, free movement of goods, services, labor, and the rights of establishment and residence. We are on board. Many achievements so far. When it comes to that area, we are now, let's say, implementing the common higher education area. We have begun implementing the single tourism visa. We are now using, in some partner states already, the identity card or national one as a document to travel in other countries. We have begun speaking about a common airspace area. We have begun implementing this single communication network area, even if it has not been achieved in all in the whole region, but still we are implementing roaming in some partner states. These are actually achievements which we appreciate and which we are happy of. We have begun implementing of the common market of monetary union. A protocol has been signed in 2013. Now we are speaking about having a law establishing the East African Community Monetary Institute, which will become later on the Central Bank of East Africa. This one has been signed by all partner states, and we are happy to have it. We are developing our bills in that area. And when it comes to the political federation, which is the fourth pillar, we have begun now implementation of this, but the decision is to pass through an East African Community Confederation, and now a team has been put in place, a team composed by 2 lawyers from each country, constitutional lawyers, to work on the East African Community Confederation Constitution. So we are on board and we are happy with the results so far. And as a result of this effort in improving doing business and many more, even if it is not 100% enough, trade volume and cross-border investment have increased. With this achievement, we also have challenges that many of them are opportunities for private sector, and we urge them to harness. Some of these challenges include harnessing from manufacturing potential through opportunities in agro-processing, pharmaceutical, chemicals industries, mining, and oil and gas. We have, of course, as I said, challenges in infrastructure and human capital, financial deepening and low level of domestic savings, and these actually are necessary to catalyze investment and employment generation. And this is the reason why actually our heads of state have already taken a decision to ensure we push towards promoting local industries. There are opportunities in energy, including green technologies and renewable energy, railways, telecommunication, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have other challenges that we are trying to address through the East African Community Council of Ministers, such as concluding the discussions on already agreed upon four-band CAT, which is the common external tariff, which is under review, but we have already agreed on having four bands. And we are also actually discussing, and this is continuous, elimination of non-tariff barriers. So we are committed, and we usher, as we usher into a new era, one of the priorities is investment attraction to harness for immense opportunities that the region offer, and private sector development through development of SMEs, value addition, to promote, again, local industries and local content, and forge partnerships with the private sector. So these are targets. We understand the concerns, and we are also strategizing on how to address the challenges. We are currently developing an online investment guide that will provide investors with information related to investment opportunities. We are developing an ESG legal and regulatory framework, procedures for investing in East Africa. And also, we are developing an online buyer and seller platform that will provide a platform for goods produced in East Africa to a wider market. Here, specifically, I want to actually to bring us an information. We have launched this week on Tuesday, 26th, in Kigali, on East African Community, COMESA, and ECOWAS, 50 million African women speak networking platform. This is for women in business. It's a platform which is now working. Through East Africa, we plan over January and February to do national launch of this platform. And we invite everyone actually to be on board so that people can benefit from this platform, which is actually a very strong achievement when it comes also to bring people in this African continental free trade area so that they can benefit from this commitment. In conclusion, in efforts of ensuring for integration is a private-led, sector-led, and people-centered, the East African Community Council of Ministers adopted the consultative dialogue framework for engagement of private sector, civil society, and other interest groups in the ESG integration process. And this is according to the treaty, especially Article 127, 28, and 29, calling actually our partner state to work together to promote business and to ensure business people and civil society are on board, and we are committed to move this way. Lastly, I commend again the private sector and especially the East African Community Business Council for this initiative that will provide resolutions to further deepen the integration and move it forward. And I urge that they continue to take lead for the advancement of the region in terms of socio-economic development. East Africa will have to trade itself out of poverty. A prosperous East Africa is good for its people, and it is also good for the global economy. ESC partner state and the East African Community Secretariat, we are committed. We are committed together with business people, for private sector, for a better future, for better achievement. And together we are strong and can achieve that. Long live East Africa, long live the business community. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Bazivamo, on behalf of the Secretary General. Now we are almost coming to the close of it, and now allow me to call the Chair of the East African Community Council of Ministers, the Honorable the Honorable Minister, please, if you may come, so that you can, of course, talk to us. Honorable Dr. Vincent Biruta. Let's appreciate him, please.
Honorable guests of honor, Minister Palamagamba Kabudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation, United Republic of Tanzania, Cabinet Ministers and Secretaries from the East African Community Partner States, the East African Community Deputy Secretary General, the Speaker of the East African Legislative Assembly, President Judge, East African Court of Justice, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors, High Commissioners, and Heads of Commissions, Honorable members of the East African Legislative Assembly, the Chairperson of the East African Business Council, members of the business community, East African Business Council Board Directors, development partners, the media, all protocols observed. Good morning.
Good morning.
On behalf of His Excellency President of the Republic of Rwanda, His Excellency Paul Kagame, and Chairman of the East African Community, I would like to express my appreciation to the East African Business Council and the East African Community Secretariat for the work and efforts put together in organizing this East African Business and Investment Summit. May I also seize this opportunity to thank the different private sector umbrella bodies at the national level for working hand in hand with the East African Business Council and mobilizing stakeholders in their respective countries to join us today. Last but far from least, allow me to acknowledge and welcome all the participants in this room for making the time to attend this event of importance for our region. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this Business and Investment Summit is unique since it is a celebration of 20 years of the revival of the East African community under the theme East African Community at 20, Deepening Integration, Widening Cooperation. This event will allow us to take stock of achievements, impediments, and future prospects for the region based on progress made in the customs union and common market protocols against a backdrop of continental and global developments of all kinds. In our region, the importance of the private sector as a key driver of our economies cannot be understated. We are well aware that job and wealth creation will be what ultimately eradicates poverty and propels our countries into middle and high income status in the decades ahead. This was underlined in the treaty establishing the East African Community, which stipulated that our integration should be private sector-led, market-driven, and just as importantly, people-centered. Specifically, Article 127 of the treaty provides for the creation of an enabling environment for the private sector and civil society. As a result, East African Community Partner States have been trying to improve the said business environment through the promotion of conducive investment codes, regulatory reforms, and market stimulation mechanisms. It is the recognition of this key role played by the private sector in our economies that led the East Africa Business Council and the East African Community Secretariat to strengthen the partnership and champion the private sector by pushing for the reforms required to overcome obstacles that stifle the entrepreneurial spirit and dynamism of business actors. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as a region, we have a lot to rejoice in, but even more to look forward to. According to recent reports of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, East Africa Community is the fastest integrating regional bloc on the African continent. And this is attributed to tremendous achievements in the implementation of commitments applicable to the customs union and common market protocols. However, there are still challenges hindering free business in the region. A number of web bridges along transit routes with mismatch in measurement from one web bridge to another, poor infrastructure that makes difficulties in movement of cargo, high roaming charges in some of the East African Community Partner States, high cost of air tickets in the East African Community region, delayed finalization of common external tariff review process, and unfriendly regulatory frameworks still existing, and self-inflicted delays in key infrastructure projects, not to mention political tensions in the region. Distinguished delegates, the identified challenges can be solved. For instance, the high cost of air tickets can be addressed by open sky policy in East African Community, whereby the policy will simplify the air travels within the region. The one network area needs to be strengthened in East African Community to facilitate fair communication across the region and easy doing business. And we need to expedite the comprehensive review of the common external tariff and to the harmonization of domestic tax regimes. On the cautious side of things, however, despite such key milestones toward trade and investment facilitations, efforts are still needed to improve the business environment and further lower the cost of doing business. The holding of this East African Business and Investment Summit is therefore timely, as our discussions will focus on how to unlock the bottlenecks to regional trade and investment and identify actions to achieve this goal. This is also an opportune time for the East African Business Council to support the process of integrating the region economically into the continent through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which will officially start on July 1st, 2020. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a lot more than just a market access initiative. It is a tool for driving Africa's economic growth, diversification, and sustainable development. A market of over 1.3 billion people is a huge trading space with a GDP of over $3 trillion US. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement provides limitless opportunity for Africa's economic transformation only if we implement it religiously and harness its full benefits. As such, we must position the private sector to be a major player in the EFCFTA, as the prospects of its success will largely depend on them. The main purpose of the EFCFTA is to create jobs by increasing productivity and exports and to create prosperity. It's therefore timely for the private sector to be at the table of decision-making to contribute to the regional integration debate in order to make integration more sustainable. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to conclude these remarks by wishing ourselves a festive 20th anniversary. Our 20-year journey has been a remarkable one indeed, with the signing of 3 protocols underlying the 4 pillars of integration, namely the Customs Union Protocol, the Common Market Protocol, and the Monetary Union Protocol. May we continue on that upward climb and celebrate many more years of economic integration. I wish to thank once again the East Africa Business Council and the Secretariat for organizing a business and investment summit, without doubt one of the landmark events of this 20th anniversary. Asanteni sana.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Vincent Biruta, who is the chair of the Council of Ministers. Before I call the chief guest, Honorable Chief Guest, I want to report 2 things to you in terms of how and what has made this a success. I know time is not on our side, but I want to tell you that the Council of Ministers helped a lot in mobilizing this and making this a success. I want to tell you that the Regional Commissioner, the Honorable Mauricio Ngabo, did a good job to mobilize the entire Arusha to be here. I want to tell you that your PS, Dr. Paranji, did a good job to make sure that everything is a big success. And I want to thank, therefore, the government of the United Republic of Tanzania for really hosting us and making this event a big success. I don't fit into the shoe of inviting you, the Honorable Minister representing the Excellency, the President, Dr. John Pombe Magufuli, but please allow me, with a lot of humility now, to welcome all of us, welcome the chair and the chief guest of this event, none other, Professor Parangamba Kabundi. Please, Professor, come and talk to us. Asante sana, Prof.
Honorable Dr. Vincent Biruta, Chairman of the East African Council of Ministers and Minister of Foreign Affairs and the International Cooperation of the Republic of Rwanda, honorable ministers from the East African Community partner states, Deputy Secretary General of the EAC, Speaker of the East African Legislative Assembly, President of the East African Court of Justice, Excellencies, High Commissioner and Ambassadors, Mr. Nicholas Nesbitt, Chairman of the East African Business Council, Honorable Members of Parliament, Governors of Central Banks, Members of the Diplomatic Corps, EAC Board of Directors, members of the business community present, media, ladies and gentlemen, habari za asubuhi. First of all, let me start by an apology of coming a bit late. I've had 3 hectic days in Nairobi, traveled overnight, and I have had a lot of meetings this morning. And immediately after here, I'm also rushing because I have a delegation waiting me at the airport for another meeting before they fly back to Europe. So if you see me after reading my opening remarks on behalf of the President, rushing out, not that because I don't respect you, but because the schedule is really tight and I wanted to be more here. On behalf of the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Dr. John Pombe Joseph Magufuli, I would like first of all to welcome you all to Tanzania and to Arusha. This is a very important meeting here in Arusha as we reflect on the 20 years of the existence of the current East African community. And I believe there's no better place to do this other than Arusha. Not be cool. And when we look at the 20 years, it means we are here to reminiscence and do a bit of reflection. And it is important when we do this reflection, we go not only in the past 20 years, but before the current EAC. So that we appreciate the level of development which we have reached. Otherwise, if you don't know the depth from where you have come from, you might not appreciate the achievements which you have been able to achieve. This is not the first time we are talking about East African integration. And I don't want to go back to the kingdoms. Because that will be a long story, which indeed is a good subject of another day, especially by the young generation of East Africans, to know that integration was there before the dawn or the coming of colonialism. But to know the East Africa that we are talking about today is basically a product of colonialism. And this checkered history of colonialism still impacts the development and the progress being made in EAC today. Perhaps had we been allowed to develop our own nation states, the borders and the configuration would have been different. But we are where we are because some people decided by rulers and pencils to say, here you are, there you are. And East Africa has experienced a checkered colonial history. And this is why when the East African integration started in the 1900s, what is today mainland Tanzania, Tanganyika, and what is today Rwanda and Burundi were out of the map because they were a German colony. It was what is today Uganda and Kenya. Starting with the East African High Commission of Governors. The governor of the Kenya colony, which was a crown colony, and the governor of a protectorate, which is Uganda. Uganda assigned peasant cash economy, and Kenya assigned white settler economy. Where lands of central Kenya, which were then called as White Highlands, were appropriated, given to the settlers, and those poor Kikuyus pushed to the Rift Valley among the Maasai and the Kalenjin. And it rears its ugly head in 2007 in the post-election violence in the Rift Valley. Because these Kikuyu squatters pushed among the Maasai and among the Kalenjin. Most of us did not realize what befell Kenya in 2007, the so-called post-election violence, was partly a result of appropriation of the lands in central Kenya and given to the white settlers. This is what Tanzania mainland escaped when their colonial masters, the Germans, were defeated in the First World War. And this is why among the places in Tanzania where you have land scarcity is Kilimanjaro and Arusha, because here is where you had the most fertile land, where the German colonial settlers wanted to grab and have their farms. And again, this country, what is today mainland Tanzania, was the crown colony of Kaiser Wilhelm. the crown colony. Under military administration, with the exception of Rwanda, Urundi, and the Bukoba, Berezik. And after the defeat of the Germans, is when now what is today mainland Tanzania is now pushed or pulled in the East African High Commission. The first test of the East African High Commission comes in 1961, when this former German colony, known as Tanganyika, which became the Cinderella of East Africa, because it was not a colony, it was not a protectorate, but rather a trustship territory of East of the United Nations, where the British never felt any responsibility of developing it, with no industry, with no infrastructure, is now being pushed in East Africa. What was the reaction of Nyerere? He says, I can't sit with colonial governors. Mzee Kivenjija is here. Now that is when we have the birth of the East African Common Services Organization. Now let us focus on Common Services Organization. And it's when the Prime Minister of Tanganyika, and later on the President of Tanganyika, says, now I can sit. It was during the East African Common Services Organization that Tanganyika, then Tanzania, raised questions. It is time now we as independent East Africans, especially after the independence of Kenya in 1963, Uganda 62, Kenya 63, Zanzibar 63 December, and then revolution in 64. What were the basic questions asked by Tanzania in 1963, 64, which are relevant today? It was the question of correcting the historical colonial inequities where Tanganyika had no single industry, which means it had nothing to sell in the common market. And it is when now Tanganyika comes with what was known as the Kampala Agreement of 1964. And the Kampala Agreement of 1964, it was before socialism, mind you, by the way. Where Tanganyika under Mwalimu Nyerere is saying it is high time now. Also, industries are allocated to Tanganyika and to Uganda. So that also Tanganyika and Uganda has something to sell in the East African Common Market. We don't say industries in Kenya should be closed, not at all. And in the Kampala Agreement of 1964, Mzee Kivenjija is here. It is when it was agreed, all investors who are investing in East Africa, in transistor radio, today when you talk of transistor radio, in the world of 5G, you are talking of an archaic world. But at that time, in the 1960s, for those of my age, the transistor radio was a big revolution. And bought tires for cars and cement. And this is why. And Uganda was given confectionery, sugar, textile. So that textile from Uganda will be sold in the East African common market. Transistor radios and those dry cells, batteries, and tires from Tanganyika will be sold in the East African common market. And definitely, Kenya will continue to dominate the market because that is where the industry was. Understandably. Mzee Kivenjija is here. The Kampala Agreement of 1964 was misinterpreted. And this is why, again, in 1965, under the Mbale Agreement, it was agreed to revise the Kampala Agreement. What revision? Also to allow some industries to be allocated to Kenya. Because the 1964 was as if now Kenya would mark time. And understandably, Kenya did not want to mark time. Why mark time? And I'm saying this because few few meters from here. You know, the bus stop where you are coming to this hotel is known as Philips. That is where the Philips company from the Netherlands built their first transistor industry in East Africa, few meters from here. This is why you have Philips, Philips, Philips. And then you go down the road to Njiro, you find General Tires from US. That is where now the tire factory for East Africa was built. Who were the investors? Philips from the Netherlands and General Tire from United States of America. What do I want to tell you? The private sector was there even before the second community, which means it is not the first time that the private sector is conceived as the driver of our integration. Which means it is important to reflect what happened. And because there was a lot of intra-trade imbalance in favor of Kenya to the disadvantage of Uganda and Tanganyika, then Tanzania, is when another commission was formed in 1965, the Phillips Commission. Phillips came from the Caribbean. Actually, in the life of the tribulations of EAC, twice we had Caribbeans coming. It was Phillips, I think Phillips, and then Eames, is when we agreed to form the East African Common Market. So the East African Community, which was formed in 1967, its end goal was the East African Common Market and not beyond, which is different with the current one. That one, the final station, was the East African Common Market. And we had the East African Common Market Tribunal, which has been succeeded by the East African Court of Justice. Because the East African Court of Appeal was not part of the EAC scheme. It was part of the British colonial scheme under the Privy Council and down. And the community of 1967 had resident ministers here in Arusha. And one of the ministers was the Minister of the Common Market. From the establishment of the community in 1967 to its demise in 1977, it was Robert Ouko from Kenya, because Kenya was assigned the common market. Uganda was assigned the infrastructure and the social services. And the last one was Colonel Marijani. And Tanganyika, or Tanzania, which had raised a lot of questions that we want to be in a community, but an equitable community, was given two positions: the Secretary General and the Minister for Finance and Administration. And among the Secretary Generals was Mzee and he has written a book on it, who became our first governor. Ministers for Finance and Administration. And let us not forget, and we are saying this not because we want to go to that, but we need to know. But unfortunately, there were a lot of forces, internal and external, which led to the acrimonious collapse of that community, which was even higher developed than the European Economic Community. Already between 67 and 77, people were using ID. We had one university, the University of East Africa, with 3 university colleges: Dar es Salaam, Makerere, and Nairobi, and each one of them with a specialization. Dar es Salaam, it was lower education and political science. Makerere, medicine, agriculture, forestry. Nairobi, engineering, veterinary medicine, and business administration. And one chancellor, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere. But because of our selfish ends, when in 1970 now, each country wanted a national university, and I don't want to say which country today, because we are celebrating 20 years. Mwalimu went to invest Obote. Mzee Kivenjija is here.
Actually, it was Uganda. Finished investing the investiture of Obote as the Chancellor of Makerere University, then went to Nairobi for the investiture of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta as the Chancellor of the University of Nairobi. And he was very emotional. And he remarked, we have killed East Africa. And the East African Standard ridiculed him. But Mwalimu was correct. That by dismantling the University of East Africa in 1970, we killed East Africa. You see, I studied European Union law in Freie Universität Berlin. Das ist, wo ich habe promoviert. Who would sign protocols, who would sign treaties. But a community, a sustainable community, is made by humans, and especially the young people. And the place, the hubbing of these young East Africans was the universities. Because all lawyers from Kenya, from Uganda, from Tanzania trooped to Dar es Salaam. And all medical doctors from Tanzania, from Kenya, from Uganda trooped to Mlago. And all the engineers and the veterinary doctors trooped to Nairobi. That is the generation I envy. They knew each other at an age where they were still innocent. You know, I always remind my colleagues and remind myself, any new friend I get today is a strategic friend. There's something he wants from me, and there's something I want to get from him or her. Indeed, we lost that opportunity. But each region has its own history and drivers of the And now, the demise of the 77 Constitution was very acrimonious. Borders between Tanganyika and Tanzania and Kenya were closed. And the English were saying misfortunes come in droves. The following year, the United Republic of Tanzania was attacked by a crazy dictator and compelled to go to war, where this country spent $5 million single-handedly. And at the same time, it had the responsibility of assisting other African countries, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Namibia, Angola, and even Zambia, which was landlocked. But still, to Mwalimu Nyerere, even after the demise, the acrimonious demise of in 1977 of the East African community, for him, he continued to tell us, the East African integration is not a matter of choice, it's a necessity. So I have recounted all that to tell you we are dealing with a project which is a necessity for our own survival. And learning from the past mistakes. This is why the current East African Treaty is a framework treaty. Let us not forget when we converged again, there was a lot of mistrust. You know, a broken marriage comes with a lot of scars, a lot of question marks. And most so, when most of the dirty bedroom details have been put to the public. But again, It was the prodding, and I'm saying so because it is also 20 years of remembrance of Mwalimu Nyerere. Again, it was the prodding of Mwalimu, especially to William Seven and President Mwinyi and President Moi, that it is time again we come together. And this is why we started with the tripartite commission, which gave birth to the current East African community, which is people-centered, and the private sector. So something is missing there. The private sector, you are selfish. You should have said people-centered and the private. Yes. Because you are driving towards the welfare of the East Africans. And having studied in the Federal Republic of Germany, I'm an advocate of the social market economy. And I was expecting my good German friend to tell us about the social market economy and not the free market economy. That is what has made Germany to be Germany, Sweden to be Sweden, Denmark to be Denmark, Norway to be Norway. It's where the market also caters for the social interest of that society. This is why they have insurance, even for unemployed. Arbeitslos. It's right. They have. Because it is a social market economy. It's a market economy, but sensitive to the social imperatives of the society. So as it was in the past, it is also now. Our community must be private sector driven, but a community, a people-centered community. If we lose that focus of people-centered community, this community won't be sustainable. And this is why I agree with Amos Wako in their report on the Federation. They say there are two types of integration: trade-centered integration and the development-centered integration. For us, for the next, again, another 20 years, should be a development-centered integration, which means we are not relegating trade, not at all. And if you want to be a development-centered integration, the private sector is very important, because you want to build industries, infrastructure. I and the Honorable President of the East African Court of Justice served in 2 commissions, in 2 teams, appointed by the Summit on the East African Federation. And we had a lot of debate and a lot of discussion, very open, very frank. And we reminded each other. Indeed, we have the 4 freedoms in the East African Common Market Protocol. But in order for these freedoms to be realizable, we need also to develop the following: infrastructure. Because you cannot talk about free movement of goods if you don't have good roads and railway. Another friend of mine is there. Together. We're discussing the East African Common Protocol. Infrastructure. In Europe today, infrastructure is not an issue because it is there. The Bundesbahn. Here, we still have the obligation of building modern railways in order to make freedom of goods effective and realizable, but also cost effective. Otherwise, the goods will be expensive, because also transportation the cost is high. Free movement of people, we discussed. We were discussing about free movement of mamambogas, not of skilled workers, which means what? We need to create skilled labor in our countries. Invest in science and technology and innovation. In Europe, it's no longer an issue. For us here, it's an issue. How much do we invest in research and development in science, technology, and investment? Free movement of services. How do you move a tourist in Zanzibar and in 1 hour he's arriving at Kigali, and the next day he's in Uganda, and the day after he's in Mombasa? In Europe, it's no longer an issue. Which means what? Our integration, as much as must follow all the freedoms and principles, needs to anchor itself in the realities of East Africa. And what has made this community to survive the 20 years? And actually, let me tell you, the first 10 years, there was a lot of anxiety because the other community collapsed at 10 years. And we are saying, God, save us from this bad omen. Yeah. And there was a big celebration at the stadium. And I'm sure for the young people, they were surprised why these old people of the age of Kivenjinja, they are so happy that it is 10 years. It is 10 years. It's because we are past the 10 years which cast us in the first integration. We are now even more elated that it is 20 years. But do you know how we achieved those 20 years? Because of pragmatism and gradualism. Pragmatism and gradualism. And there are many who criticize that because they are looking at the treaty and the protocol and they want speed. But once bitten, twice shy. So that pragmatism and gradualism has made us to survive to our 20th anniversary. We should not regret of our speed. Instead, we should applaud the wisdom of those who brought. But now it is time, when you reflect on the way forward, to reflect on the way forward which will make all East African countries to be part of this community. When we are negotiating the East African Common Market Protocol, my friend is here, when Tanzania came with the concept of East African industries, which again will be allocated to a specific country, people say that is socialism. No. And I'll say openly, at that time we were saying, you cannot have a member of the community like Burundi selling nothing to the community and then say, we are together. Together when they are selling nothing. Make them sell something. That is what Europe did to Greece, to Portugal, to Spain. There won't be a modern Spain, a modern Portugal, a modern Greece without the sacrifice of Germans pumping money and investment. I'm saying the truth or I'm lying, sir? Yes. Solidarity. So as we reflect in the future, let us see how the other countries in East Africa which have less industries, the private sector, you have a responsibility not only of waiting for conducive environment, but for you going there and creating a conducive environment. That is what Bismarck said. That is what Otto von Bismarck said. You don't wait until the iron is hot in order to heat it. Make it hot and then heat it. You know, I've said all that because the president told me just to say, I wish you all the best. Congratulate the East African Business Council on this keynote milestone and wish you a fruitful deliberations during these 2 days. And now, it is my singular honor and privilege to pronounce the high-level East African Business and Investment Summit officially opened.
Thank you so much. You may take your seat, Honorable Kabudi, as we officially launch the East Africa Business and Investment Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, our work has begun. It has been cut out. There you have it. Round of applause as we begin these important deliberations. At this point, I'd like to invite the regional ministers to join their counterparts here on stage. Regional ministers from Kenya, from Uganda, Burundi, and South Sudan. Kindly make your way up to the stage. We'd like to commemorate this occasion with a photo. It is also an accountability measure, so anyone who is in that photo, we will hold accountable for the success of this region. We'll have them come up. We'll also have various parties join them as we commemorate this point. Honorable Kabudi taking us through a lesson of the EAC and the reason why we need such an engagement. Now, a request for the honorable ministers, EABC chair, to rise so we can have you arranged, and the photographers, shutterbugs, can get in position to capture this moment. Members of the Fourth Estate in position, wonderful, so we can capture this momentous occasion as well. Indeed, our work has been cut out for us. Can we please have the honorable ministers rise? Wonderful. And also move to the center of the stage so we can capture the Tanzanian minister as well. Kindly make your way up, sir. Apologies for that. The Minister for Trade here in the United Republic of Tanzania, thank you so much. Wonderful. And we can have them positioned there to join this photo. So we'll have the honorable ministers take the photo first, after which we will have various individuals join in as well. There we have it. The President Judge also joined the photo as well. I will be calling on you, so kindly make your way up once you do hear your name or title. A momentous occasion indeed. Wonderful. And the next group of individuals I'd like to call the EABC Board of Directors. EABC Board of Directors, kindly join the photo as well. Make your way on stage. Honorable ministers, I beg your indulgence to remain on stage as we call on other groups to join the photo. A request from the photographers to kindly turn off the screen behind us. It's interfering with the photo. Could we kindly turn off the screen so we can get better resolution for the photos? Thank you so much, technical team. Kindly facilitate that as well. This photo now with the honorable ministers from the region and the EABC Board of Directors. I'd like to call on Vimal Shah, BID co-chair, to make his way up as well to join the photo. Thank you so much, sir. These are critical individuals to the transformation of this region, captains of industry, policymakers, government officials who are instrumental in seeing the region become what we dream it to be. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, EABC Board Directors. You may take your seats. Wonderful. The next group I'd like to call on are ambassadors present, ambassadors from the various development partner countries. Thank you so much. You may take your seats. Kindly join the ministers. We don't want to keep them too tired. They've been standing quite a while. Ambassadors, kindly join the photo. And members of the diplomatic corps present. Ambassadors and members of the diplomatic corps present, kindly make your way up. We want to include you in this momentous occasion. Wonderful. I hope we're able to capture all of them there with the honorable ministers from the region. Fantastic. Thank you so much to the ambassadors and members of the diplomatic corps. You may take your seats. Honorable ministers, kindly stay on stage. The next group are the national focal points. National focal points, if you are present, please make your way up as we capture this moment as well. National focal points. If you can make this process as seamless as possible, You can enter to my right or stage left, or to my left, stage right. Development partners as well, kindly make your way up as well. And if we are limited in terms of space on the stage, we can also have you stand right in the front so we can accommodate everyone. National Focal Point Chairman and CEOs present. Again, if we have limited space, of course we want to accommodate everyone. On the stage, we do also have room right in front of the stage. Thank you so much. Wonderful. You may take your seats. Those are the National Focal Point CEOs and Chairman. Thank you. Next, EAC and IALA members present. Kindly make your way up. EAC and IALA members, our legislators, policymakers, kindly make your way up to the stage. We want to recognize you. Thank you so much for gracing this occasion. A whole host of members of the EAC and IALA, individuals who are many times in the background, churning the wheels of this region. Karibu sana. And just a quick note, after this we'll be heading into a tea break. And there will also be a press briefing for members of the Fourth Estate. We have not left you out. You will be accommodated certainly after this session. Great, so these are the EAC and IALA members. Wonderful. And the final group, these truly are the individuals who have made this event happen. We'll have the EABC staff and golden members also join in this photo.
Just golden members.
EABC staff and golden members, kindly make your way up as we commemorate this occasion as well. We'll have the sponsors and speakers come on right after the EABC staff and gold members take their photo. Kindly I request your patience as we try to facilitate the photo session. Thank you so much. As I said, these are the individuals who have made this event possible, so we appreciate them. EABC staff, thank you so much. You may take your seats. Now calling on the sponsors and speakers who will be addressing the various panel discussions throughout the day, today and tomorrow. Kindly make your way up. The individuals who will be thinking us through the next phase of the East African region. Speakers, sponsors, kindly make your way up. We appreciate your presence and your contributions that you'll be giving throughout the deliberations today and tomorrow. We appreciate your time and energies that you are investing into the future of this region. Wonderful, you may take your seats, thank you. And last but not least, honorable ministers, my apologies, this is the last group. The golden members who have been instrumental in funding the work of the EABC, kindly make your way up as well. We cannot forget you. We'll have you positioned with the honorable ministers, after which you may take your seats. Gold members of the EABC supporting the financial cause of the EABC. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Now, you may take your seats. Thank you so much. Honorable ministers, you may also take your seats. Thank you for your patience and indulgence as well. That completes the photo session. And we certainly have a memento to remember this event by. Now, I'd like to announce really quickly, we're heading into a brief, very brief tea break. Time is well spent. And I'd request that our VIPs, speakers from the earlier session, you'll be led into a VIP room where you will serve tea. Other delegates, tea is right outside in the foyer. So I'll release you there. Can we please take about 10 to 15 minutes for the tea break, after which we'll convene back here into the plenary for the first panel discussion. Once again, VIPs will be led by an EABC team member to the VIP room where they will serve. Delegates, tea is served just outside in the foyer area. And for my fellow members of the Fourth Estate, there is a press briefing in the room just adjacent to this one. There'll be a press briefing just adjacent to this one, so kindly make your way there, begin setup as we carry on with that press briefing. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll convene back here in another 10 to 15 minutes. Thank you.
breakout sessions.
Those are breakout sessions.
Yeah, they're about 4, I think. So they've written.
So just about here. Panel breakout sessions, yeah. But the one we're coming here for is plenary for everyone. Then we break it to here. We just do
It's not breakout. Fine, how are you doing? All right. Good to see you too. Yes. You're welcome. Excellent. So when is the next session?
Actually, it's supposed to be starting, I think, in
How
the
are
next
you?
10 minutes.
Good. I know you don't remember me,
I know.
but you've interviewed me many times. It's good.
Comment.
It's good to see. Yes. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah, and you're doing very well. I follow you. You're doing a great job. You know, I'm in the East Africa now. Yeah. So I'm here now. Yeah, and I'm one of the panelists in one of the things about to start now. The one on the African continent. Yeah, Badai.
No, you
You can pick up on the lunch future.
This one is late.
Yeah.
This one is late.
Yeah.
1 hour late.
This is the one I am. This is the one I'm a
This
panelist.
after this.
We'll start another one first, and then this one.
Yep, I'm coming. Okay, so we need to start calling people inside.
Yes, I'm actually looking for the panelists.
Where are they?
One is
Seated here. George.
The presenter?
the panelists.
Isn't that George?
This is the one. No.
You
So
want
we
me to
need
call him?
panelists and we need Vimal as well, the moderator.
No, it's not a breakaway session now, it's a plenary right now. Yes, then the... Here, where the opening was. Right now.
Right now, for this one we're going to have...
Yes, I got it.
Thank you.
How you doing? Great work. Since yesterday.
Oh God, it has been a marathon, which it still is.
But it's good so far.
Yes.
So maybe we'll announce that those that have presentations that have not given me, you can give them to me so that you have put them in one.
Where do they find you?
I'll be here. Your left.
I'll do that. And then
So now
the
we're going to
first
the plenary,
presenter
right?
ready. Hi.
Have you guys changed the program in any way? You need people who know how to hand counts. Because that's the only way you're going to bring those.
Vimalsha is the moderator, and the panelists are being gathered right now as we speak.
Oh, there's somebody specific you're looking for them. Show me the list. My name.
Okay, so this is the list right here. Chris Kipcho, Joseph Kigundu,
Then I don't know him. Jojo.
Arodi,
Diana is here.
and Diana.
So let me look for people. Vimal. Let me join your team. Diana is in the corner, yeah?
If I make an announcement, so these are the mics.
Yeah.
So you need to mic the panelists. You need to mic the panelists. Are they going to use those? Yes. Okay, we need to do mic them. George is there. Can this be heard out there?
No. Unless otherwise we open the doors.
Call them, they come get mic'd. We need the panelists. They need to be mic'd. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to call this second session into order. If you are a panelist on the Trade and Investment Climate panel, we request that you make your way to the front. I can see our able moderator, Vimal Shah, is here already. However, prior to the discussion, we will have a presentation by Mr. Kiboa, who is the director of the Trade East African Community Secretariat. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have finished your tea, coffee, and conversation, kindly make your way back into plenary as we begin the second session on trade and investment climate. Thank you.
Rounding up the cows will take time.
It will.
So where do I sit?
So once the presentation is done, you'll be down here first.
Yeah.
Once it's done, I'll call you up. I'll
Where do you want me to
introduce
sit?
you. can sit right here. Right here. Yeah. And then
Do they know where they're sitting, or is it?
not yet. It'll be as I call them up, they'll take their seat.
Do we know whether they're all here or not? Because I didn't find Chris joining us.
Not yet. I think
We could replace the next slide.
for the panel, that is with the EABC team. There's a lady in a red dress all the way in the back.
Wewe kama uwe unarejea, you don't want just managing the spread. Kwa manake kwa ile pointer na slider unaweza maybe connect manage the presentation from here. No, that's not possible. Yeah. Unless you got yeah. The patch are similar one, all caps. All caps. Yeah. No, no. Let me connect. I'll show you.
Is the presenter ready? Did he want to? The presenter. Is he here?
No, he just put the mic there and then.
No, not the moderator, the presenter. With the laptop.
He came and then he just.
He needs to be here because I'm about to announce.
See what I'm calling? User and password. Con. Big. 20.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are just about to begin this plenary session on trade and investment, moderated by BIDGO Chair Vimal Shah. However, before that, we'll have a keynote presentation by Mr. Alhaji Rashidi Kiboa, who is the Director of Trade, East African Community Secretariat. A kind request for Mr. Kiboa to make his way to the stage as we begin in the next 2 minutes. Thank you.
Where can I sit? Somewhere?
Wonderful. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Yeah. Welcome back. I hope tea and coffee energized us and got us ready for this next session on trade and investment. Now, with a population of 168 million and a GDP of roughly 155 billion US dollars, the East African region is full of opportunities that are ready to be tapped into. But the question is, how do we maximize on these existing opportunities and tap into especially those in trade and investment? Now, before we start the panel discussion, I'd like to invite our keynote presenter, Mr. Kiboa, who is the Director of the Trade East African Community Secretariat, to take us through a brief on what it is we'll be discussing in this particular panel session. We'll try to keep this as tight as possible given time, so if we could keep this within an hour before we go into the breakout sessions. So if you could, Mr. Kiboa, keep it to at least 10 minutes. Thank you. Round of applause for him.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Ministers, Permanent Secretaries, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol is observed. As already mentioned, my name is Alhaji Rashidi Kiboa, and I work for the EAC as the Director for Trade. My work has already been made easy by one of the key presenters who requested that we keep this talk as hard as possible. And I promise, around his closing remarks, talked a lot about the way forward. So in respect to those two areas, my work has been made tremendously easy. By way of outline, ladies and gentlemen, after observing all the protocol, my presentation will generally cover 4 areas as in that slide. The first one is to talk about the EAC integration process generally. ESC trade landscape and the key issues, challenges, and way forward, and the same for ESC investment. And I will end with some proposals in terms of the way forward. Looking at the audience, ladies and gentlemen, and taking into account the expectations of the EABC and the private sector in the region generally, I'll not take a lot of time on the first elements in my proposal because I trust that you know a lot about the EAC. So you will find the larger part of my coverage in those areas in terms of what obtains for EAC, generally for our trade and investment in your slide of the situational analysis, what obtained is in those two respective areas. So 2.1 key tenets, you know all about that. Current initiatives to upscale ESC trade performance. These are all frameworks that you largely know about. So you'll find them in your slides. Programs for elimination of NTBs. So many things are being done, and some of them were highlighted in the earlier speeches. You'll find all this in your slides.